He succeeds me as Duke of Cornwall and takes on the responsibilities for the Duchy of Cornwall, which I have undertaken for more than 5 decades. Today, I am proud to create him Prince of Wales, Tywysog Cymru.
3 min ago, Camilla collapses after Charles gives William his king title and shuts her grandson out. Okay, stay with this for a moment, because the claim at the center of this royal drama is far bigger than a title. According to the scenario surrounding this report, Charles has just made a decision that places William at the heart of the monarchy's future, while a separate decision cuts Camilla's grandson out of an important royal opportunity. And when Camilla reportedly realizes the exclusion is not temporary, her composure disappears. The shock is not that William has been given a clearer path toward the throne. It is that Charles is said to have drawn a line around the institution, and that line leaves Camilla's side of the family standing outside it. That is why her reported collapse matters. It turns a constitutional question into a deeply personal family confrontation, with Charles, William, and Camilla suddenly facing consequences none of them can easily reverse. Now, watch this closely. William is not celebrating. Charles is not explaining himself. Camilla is being helped away from the room, while senior figures remain frozen, trying to understand what has just happened. The room has gone quiet, because the announcement appears to contain 2 messages at once. William is being positioned for greater authority, while Camilla's grandson is being denied the place some had expected him to receive. And this is where the story becomes uncomfortable. If Charles really intended only to strengthen William, why was the decision structured in a way that also limited an opportunity for Camilla's grandson? Was this simply an attempt to simplify the future monarchy, or was Charles deliberately sending a message about who belongs at its center? Hi viewers, if you believe a family member should be treated fairly, even when palace politics gets involved, ask yourself one simple question. Would you stand up for your own family if they were pushed aside? If your answer is yes, leave a simple yes in the comments, because silence is exactly how decisions like this can pass without anyone asking who gets hurt. The immediate reaction reportedly tells its own story. Camilla is not said to have collapsed because William received recognition alone. The deeper blow comes when she understands that the same royal restructuring could prevent her grandson from gaining the access, visibility, or responsibility that had once seemed possible. In a palace environment where titles, duties, invitations, and official roles can carry enormous symbolic weight, being left outside the circle can feel like a verdict even when nobody says the word exclusion aloud. Charles, meanwhile, remains at the center of the storm. He does not rush to undo the decision. He does not publicly soften it. He allows the announcement to stand.
The country whose title I've been so greatly privileged to bear during so much of my life and duty. With Catherine beside him, our new Prince and Princess of Wales will, I know, continue to inspire and lead our national conversations, helping to bring the marginal to the center ground.
And that silence becomes almost as powerful as the decision itself. William watches the reaction and appears to understand immediately that his new position has come with a price. The future he was born to inherit has suddenly collided with the present pain of his father's family. That is what makes this moment different from an ordinary royal disagreement. The conflict is not merely about who gets a title or who attends an event. It is about the architecture of the monarchy itself. Who receives authority? Who remains close to the institution? Who gets opportunities because of family connections? And who discovers, too late, that being related to a future king does not automatically guarantee a place beside him? There is another detail that reportedly makes the situation even more serious. The decision does not appear to have been created in the final seconds before the announcement. The groundwork may have been laid earlier, through private discussions about succession, royal responsibilities, household authority, and the public image of the family. That possibility changes everything, because it means Camilla may not have been reacting to a sudden decision at all. She may have been watching the final stage of a plan that had already been moving without her full knowledge. William's position is therefore the first mystery. Camilla's grandson is the second. But Charles's silence is the third. Why would a father make such a sweeping decision while knowing it could wound someone he loves? The answer, according to the claims surrounding this scenario, is tied to Charles's desire to establish a cleaner and more direct future for the monarchy. William is the immediate heir. His responsibilities are expected to grow. The institution needs a clear center of gravity. But that explanation does not erase the personal consequences. It only makes them harder to challenge. Camilla reportedly sees the situation differently. From her perspective, strengthening William while restricting her grandson can look less like administrative housekeeping and more like a deliberate reshaping of the family hierarchy. She is left facing a painful possibility. Charles may be choosing the institution over the balance she had hoped to preserve inside the family. And then comes the moment that reportedly changes the atmosphere completely. Camilla is said to have noticed that the paperwork surrounding William's new position was already prepared. The timing raises an unsettling question. If the documents were ready before the announcement, who knew? Who approved them? And how long had Charles been considering the decision? Those questions matter because the palace can survive a disagreement. It can survive gossip. It can even survive a furious private argument. What becomes much harder to contain is the discovery that a decision affecting the future of the family was allegedly settled before the people most emotionally affected understood its full reach. William now has to face a different problem. He may have received the authority associated with the future king, but he cannot control how others interpret the price of that elevation. If Camilla believes her grandson has been sacrificed to strengthen William, resentment could follow him into every future royal decision. Charles knows that too. That is why his silence is so striking. He appears to understand that once the new structure is accepted,
at the heart of the pageantry is a simple message: service. My father's first words on entering Westminster Abbey yesterday were a pledge of service. It was a pledge to continue to serve.
Reversing it could create an even larger crisis. If he retreats now, William's authority could look uncertain. If he stands firm, Camilla's family may feel permanently pushed away. Either choice carries a cost. For William, that creates a burden nobody watching from outside can see. Every new privilege can now be interpreted as something taken from someone else. Every ceremony can revive questions of who was included and who was left behind. And for Camilla, the pain is no longer private. The decision has forced her to confront a future where her grandson's connection to the monarchy may remain personal, but never become institutional as she once imagined. And Camilla is left with the hardest realization of all. The decision may not be about her grandson alone. It may be the clearest signal yet that the monarchy Charles wants to leave behind will be built around William's direct future, even when that means closing doors that once appeared open to other branches of the family. The room has changed. William has been elevated. Camilla has been shaken. Her grandson's expected opportunity has suddenly disappeared, and Charles has said enough through his actions to make one thing clear: this was not a casual palace adjustment. But there is still one question nobody in that room can answer yet. What happened before this announcement that convinced Charles to make the decision permanent? Because the next revelation does not begin with the title. It begins days earlier, behind a closed door, when Camilla reportedly challenged Charles directly and discovered that he had already made up his mind. If you think the decision to shut Camilla's grandson out was already shocking, stay here and keep watching, because the conversation that allegedly triggered Charles's final choice is where this story gets much worse. 6 days before the announcement, Charles closed the folder and asked everyone else to leave the room. The meeting had started as a routine discussion about royal duties. It did not remain routine for long. According to the scenario surrounding the palace dispute, Charles was presented with proposals that would give William a clearer command over senior responsibilities and define which members of the wider family could receive formal opportunities. The papers looked administrative. The implications were anything but. One name kept returning to the discussion: Camilla's grandson.
Because for over 50 years, in every corner of the UK, across the Commonwealth, and around the world, he has dedicated himself to serve others, both current and future generations, and those whose memory must not be neglected.
His future was not being discussed as a question of affection. It was being discussed as a question of institutional access. That distinction mattered. A family member could remain loved, welcomed, and respected while still being excluded from an official role. Charles appeared determined to make that boundary unmistakable. Camilla did not accept it. She reportedly entered the private discussion, expecting to argue over timing. Instead, she found that the proposed changes had already been developed in considerable detail. The question was no longer whether William's responsibilities should expand. The harder question was how far the restructuring should go, and whether Camilla's grandson should remain eligible for the opportunity that had once seemed possible. Charles listened, while Camilla challenged the reasoning. Her concern was simple. If William was being placed more firmly at the center of the monarchy, why did that require closing a door for her grandson? She wanted to know whether the two decisions were genuinely connected or whether the palace was using succession planning to justify a family preference. That question forced Charles to confront the personal side of what had been presented as an institutional decision. He reportedly insisted that the issue was not about rejecting Camilla's family. The monarchy, he argued within this account, could not keep expanding official responsibilities simply because relatives were close to the sovereign. William's position was different because succession already placed him at the center of the institution. Camilla was not satisfied. She pushed harder, asking whether the future had already been decided around William before everyone else had been given a meaningful chance to object. Her concern was not only for her grandson, it was also about what the new arrangement would say about her own family's place beside Charles. Charles then made the point that changed the tone of the meeting. The future king could not be treated as merely another senior royal waiting for his turn. William needed a defined path, defined responsibilities, and a structure that would not be constantly renegotiated around competing family expectations. That statement reportedly stunned Camilla because it revealed the principle behind the entire plan. Charles was not simply adding responsibilities to William's schedule. He was trying to reduce the number of people whose institutional position could influence the succession. And that meant Camilla's grandson was facing a boundary that personal relationships could not easily overcome. Take a moment and consider what that means. If a royal opportunity is removed because the institution is being simplified, there is no obvious villain to blame. But if the same decision repeatedly favors one branch of the family, questions about motive become unavoidable. That uncertainty is exactly what made Camilla's objection so difficult to dismiss. William was brought into the discussion later. He had not requested the meeting, and according to the scenario, he had not asked Charles to remove his cousin from consideration. Charles wanted his son's view, but William refused to turn the conversation into a contest between family members. Instead, he asked one question: was Charles certain? The room went quiet. William understood that if his father moved forward, every advantage attached to the decision could later be interpreted as something William had taken. He did not want the new authority to begin with accusations that he had pressured Charles. Camilla saw that hesitation and pressed her argument further. She reportedly warned that once the structure was changed, restoring the old balance would become nearly impossible. She wanted Charles to slow down and reconsider whether the institution truly needed such a sharp division between William's future and the opportunities available to other relatives. Charles did not immediately answer. That silence became significant because the issue was no longer about paperwork. It was about whether he believed the old arrangement could survive the future he was preparing. The meeting eventually broke without a public resolution, but the dispute had exposed something Charles could no longer ignore. Every attempt to preserve flexibility created another argument over who should receive responsibility, access, and recognition. The palace could keep postponing the decision, or Charles could choose a structure and accept the consequences. He chose the second option. Later that evening, Charles reportedly contacted officials involved in preparing the formal process. The instruction was not presented as a punishment against Camilla's grandson. It was framed around succession, clarity, and the future organization of royal duties. But the effect was the same. Once the process began, the opportunity Camilla had been defending became increasingly difficult to restore. And this is where the story takes its most uncomfortable turn. Camilla reportedly believed she still had time to persuade Charles. She did not realize that the machinery of the decision was already moving. A private approval had begun turning an argument into an outcome. That distinction matters because it explains why the eventual announcement could feel sudden to people outside the palace, while appearing almost inevitable to those who had seen the preparations. Charles had not woken up that morning and suddenly decided to elevate William. He had spent days weighing the consequences. He knew Camilla would object. He knew William might feel uncomfortable receiving authority under such circumstances. And he knew excluding her grandson could create resentment that would not disappear with one announcement. Yet he continued. The reason, according to the account, was that Charles had become convinced the monarchy needed a direct line of responsibility. William could not move toward the throne, while the institution remained crowded with competing expectations about who should receive official standing. That decision also created a new burden for William. If he accepted the stronger position, he would inherit not only authority, but the suspicion that others had been pushed aside to make room for him. That was the trap waiting at the end of the process. William could accept what his father offered and risk being blamed for the exclusion, or question the decision and risk weakening the very structure Charles believed necessary. Meanwhile, Camilla faced a different choice. She could continue fighting the decision and make the dispute more public, or accept that Charles had separated personal family loyalty from institutional privilege. Neither option gave her what she wanted. The final conversation that evening ended with Charles closing the folder again. But this time, the papers did not return to a drawer. They were moved forward. By the following day, officials were preparing the next stage. Dates were being checked. Briefings were being organized. The language surrounding William's position was being refined. Camilla still had one opportunity to challenge the plan, and there was another detail that made the situation more serious. The language being prepared did not merely describe William's responsibilities, it reportedly defined the limits around other family members as well. That meant the grandson's exclusion could become part of the new structure itself, rather than a temporary decision made for one event or one season. Once that happened, reversing it would require another deliberate decision from the same man. She did not yet know that the next meeting would remove that opportunity. If this decision feels wrong to you, do not just watch silently, because the next part reveals what Charles allegedly put into motion behind closed doors, and that is where Camilla's grandson was pushed even further out. The next meeting began with a document that Camilla had not expected to see. It was not an announcement. It was not a speech. It was a written outline of how William's expanded position would affect the wider royal household, and one section carried the detail that reportedly made Camilla stop reading. her grandson was not listed. At first, the omission could have been dismissed as administrative. Names are left out of documents for many reasons, but the surrounding language made the omission harder to explain. The opportunities being reviewed were being narrowed, and the people considered central to the future structure were becoming increasingly clear. William was there. Camilla's grandson was not. That contrast forced Camilla to confront what Charles had been trying to explain. The institution was being reorganized around the direct line of succession, and her grandson was outside that line. She reportedly asked whether the omission was temporary. Charles did not give her the reassurance she wanted. He explained that no personal rejection was intended. The issue was institutional responsibility. If a royal role existed because of the monarchy, then its future could not be determined simply by family closeness. The institution had to know who carried constitutional weight and who did not. Camilla pushed back immediately. She reportedly argued that the distinction sounded neat on paper, but felt very different inside a family. Her grandson could be treated as family in private, while being denied opportunities in public. She wanted Charles to acknowledge that this would create a visible divide. Charles reportedly understood the concern. He still refused to change course. That refusal shifted the confrontation. Camilla was no longer trying to understand the decision. She was trying to stop it. William remained careful throughout the discussion. He reportedly made clear that he had not asked for his relative to be excluded. His position had been strengthened by Charles, but he did not want that strengthening interpreted as a personal campaign against another member of the family. That distinction mattered. Without it, the story would have been simple. William rises. Camilla loses. Her grandson is pushed aside. But the deeper conflict was more complicated because William appeared to be receiving a decision he had not designed. Camilla then asked the question that reportedly changed the meeting. If William had not requested this, who had decided that her grandson no longer belonged in the future arrangement? Charles answered without blaming William. He had. The admission reportedly landed harder than any argument before it. Camilla had spent the previous days questioning advisors, timing, palace strategy, and the rapid expansion of William's responsibilities. But the final authority was not hidden inside a committee. Charles had made the choice himself. That meant there was no procedural obstacle she could challenge. No advisor could simply reverse it. No official could claim responsibility and offer a compromise. The decision belonged to the man sitting across from her. Camilla reportedly asked why Charles had not warned her before reaching that point. His answer was blunt. He believed that if he gave her enough time, she would continue trying to preserve an arrangement he had already concluded could not continue. That was the moment the disagreement became personal. Camilla was not merely angry about losing an opportunity for her grandson. She was hurt that Charles had made a permanent decision without allowing her to influence the outcome. Charles, however, saw the same situation differently. From his perspective, endless consultation had become another form of delay. Every new discussion reopened the same argument. William's future remained uncertain, the wider family continued competing for relevance, and the monarchy risked appearing unable to decide what it wanted to become. He wanted an end to that uncertainty, and he believed William was the clearest answer. That did not mean William was being handed unlimited power. It meant his future responsibilities were being defined more firmly, while the wider family would have fewer opportunities to claim an institutional role simply through proximity to the sovereign. Camilla reportedly understood the logic. She rejected the consequence. Her grandson had not chosen his position in the family. He had not created the succession rules. Yet he was the person losing an opportunity because Charles wanted those rules applied more strictly. The emotional pressure inside the room grew. William eventually stepped closer to the discussion and reportedly told Camilla that he understood why she was angry, but he also warned that turning the decision into a personal battle between families would make the situation worse. Camilla looked at him and asked whether he expected her to simply accept it. William's answer was reportedly measured. He did not expect acceptance overnight. He expected everyone to understand that the decision was no longer being negotiated. That sentence changed the atmosphere again, because William had just confirmed what Camilla feared most. The door was closing. Not temporarily. Not until the next ceremony. Not until another family meeting. The structure itself was changing. And once that became clear, Camilla's anger turned toward Charles with renewed force. She reportedly confronted him privately one more time and asked whether William's elevation had been worth creating this division. Charles did not answer immediately. Instead, he returned to the principle he had repeated from the beginning. The monarchy could not be rebuilt around every family relationship. It needed a clear succession path and clearly defined responsibilities. But Camilla was no longer asking about the monarchy. She was asking about the family. She wanted to know whether Charles understood what his decision would communicate to her grandson. Being told that the exclusion was institutional would not prevent him from feeling personally rejected. Charles reportedly acknowledged that risk. Then he made the point that Camilla found hardest to accept. He could not guarantee every relative a place inside the institution simply because excluding them might hurt. That was the line. For Charles, the monarchy had to survive individual disappointment. For Camilla, family could not be reduced to organizational charts. Neither side was willing to surrender. The following morning, another change appeared. A proposed opportunity connected to Camilla's grandson was removed from the schedule. There was no dramatic announcement, no public statement, no confrontation in front of cameras. It simply disappeared. That quiet removal carried more weight than a public argument. Camilla now had proof that the decision was moving from discussion into practice. She reportedly demanded an explanation. The response was brief. The opportunity was no longer considered appropriate under the revised structure. That phrase gave her the answer she had been trying to avoid. There would be no second invitation, no temporary pause. No promise that the position would be reconsidered after William settled into his new role. The boundary was being established before William's elevation became public. And then Camilla reportedly discovered one final detail. Charles had already approved the wording. The same wording that separated William's future responsibilities from the wider family's opportunities had passed through his hands before Camilla realized how permanent the change could become. That discovery changed her understanding of the entire dispute. She had believed she was arguing against a proposal. She was actually arguing against a decision, and the man she needed to persuade had already decided. The next step would no longer be a private disagreement. It would be the moment the palace machinery made Charles's decision visible to everyone. That was when William's new authority stopped being an internal plan and became a public reality. And if Camilla thought losing her grandson's opportunity was the worst part, she was about to discover what Charles's final instruction meant for her own position inside the palace. Because once William's authority became public, every private compromise Camilla had hoped for would become harder to recover, and every unanswered question would become a palace-wide confrontation quickly. The palace did not need another announcement to reveal what had changed. The first signs appeared in schedules, briefings, and decisions that suddenly stopped waiting for Charles. William's office became the point where senior matters were being routed. Papers that once moved toward Charles were redirected. Meetings were adjusted. Staff began checking whether William's approval was required before moving forward. None of those changes looked dramatic on their own. Together, they showed that the decision was already taking effect. For Camilla, the hardest evidence came through a meeting that had been expected to continue under the old arrangement. She arrived prepared for the usual briefing and discovered that the matter had been transferred elsewhere. Her secretary explained that the new structure required William's authorization. Camilla reportedly stared at the revised schedule before asking a simple question. When had that changed? The answer was brief. The change had followed Charles's new instructions. That was the moment the distinction between a title and real authority became impossible to ignore. William was not simply being described as the future center of the monarchy. People inside the institution were already adjusting their behavior around him, and Camilla's grandson was feeling the same shift from the other side. An opportunity that had once appeared possible was no longer being prepared for him. Staff were told not to proceed with arrangements connected to the role. No public humiliation followed. There was no announcement naming him or explaining why he had been left out. The absence itself became the message. Camilla reportedly struggled with that silence because it offered nothing to argue against. A public decision can be challenged. A private administrative instruction is harder to fight because it leaves fewer words behind. She asked whether Charles could reconsider. He refused. His position remained that the new structure was not intended to punish anyone. It was meant to establish a clearer hierarchy around William and prevent the monarchy from becoming dependent on a growing collection of unofficial expectations. Camilla reportedly heard something different. She heard that her grandson's connection to the royal family was not enough to secure a place within its formal future. That realization sharpened the family conflict. William was now confronted with another problem. The more visibly his authority expanded, the easier it became for critics inside the family to associate him with every consequence of Charles's decision. Yet he reportedly knew that rejecting the arrangement publicly could create a constitutional and institutional problem of its own. So he chose a different approach. William instructed senior staff not to treat the restructuring as permission to humiliate Camilla or her family. Her personal dignity was to be respected. Her household was not to be targeted simply because the institutional hierarchy had changed. That instruction surprised Camilla. She had expected William to defend every part of the new arrangement without qualification. Instead, he drew a line between authority and retaliation. But the line did not restore what had been taken away. The grandson remained outside the opportunity that had been removed. Camilla's influence over certain institutional matters remained reduced. William's responsibilities continued expanding. The message was becoming clear. This was not revenge, it was restructuring. That distinction mattered because it removed the easiest explanation for what was happening. There was no dramatic order to punish Camilla. There was no demand that her family disappear from royal life. Charles was attempting to separate personal relationships from official power. Yet that separation was creating its own kind of pain. Camilla reportedly began to understand that her grandson could remain part of the family while being excluded from the machinery of the monarchy. The two things could exist at the same time, but accepting that reality was far harder than hearing it explained. Then another development reached her. William wanted to meet with her privately. There would be no advisors in the room. No staff would speak for either side. No prepared statement would control the conversation. Camilla reportedly agreed. Before the meeting, William reviewed the changes that had already taken effect. He understood that his new authority had arrived alongside a family wound. He also understood that if he allowed resentment to define his first steps, the dispute could become permanent. Charles had given him the position. Now William had to decide what kind of authority he would exercise. Would he use the decision to strengthen his control over the family, or would he show that institutional firmness did not require personal cruelty? Camilla entered the private room expecting another argument about her grandson. Instead, William began by talking about Charles. He reportedly acknowledged that the transition had not been easy for anyone. His father had spent years carrying the responsibilities of the crown, and the new arrangement represented a profound change for him. William did not describe the moment as a victory. That surprised Camilla. For the first time since the dispute began, she saw that William was carrying his own burden. He had gained authority, but he had also inherited the consequences of the decision. Camilla then asked the question she had been holding back. Did William believe her grandson deserved to be shut out? William reportedly answered carefully. He had not requested the exclusion. He would not pretend the decision had not happened. But he also would not turn his new position into a weapon against her family. That answer left Camilla with a problem she could not escape. If William was not responsible for the exclusion, and Charles had deliberately made the choice, then her anger could no longer be directed at the person who appeared to benefit most. The real decision-maker was still Charles, and Charles was about to explain why he believed the family had reached a point where there was no going back. The conversation became more difficult when William acknowledged something else. He understood why Camilla viewed the change as a rejection of her grandson, because the practical result was impossible to disguise. An opportunity had been withdrawn, access had narrowed, and the new hierarchy placed William unmistakably above the wider family structure. But William reportedly rejected the idea that the change should become a permanent feud. He wanted the palace to function without humiliating anyone. That meant the rules could be firm while the treatment remained respectful. For Camilla, that was not enough. Respect could not replace the opportunity her grandson had lost. She reportedly asked whether Charles had considered the message this would send. William's response was reportedly direct. Charles had considered it. He had accepted that someone would be disappointed because he believed delaying the decision would create a larger problem later. That answer gave Camilla a final piece of information. The exclusion had not been an accidental consequence buried inside William's elevation. Charles knew the two outcomes would arrive together. He had accepted the family tension before the public announcement ever occurred. Camilla left the meeting without the reversal she wanted, but she was no longer facing uncertainty. She knew where William stood. She knew the grandson's opportunity was not being restored, and she knew Charles had deliberately accepted the consequences. Outside the room, palace staff continued preparing for William's expanded responsibilities. The transition moved forward without waiting for the family to feel ready. That was the real pressure building inside the palace. The announcement had not created the conflict. It had exposed a decision already made. And with every passing hour, the cost of reversing it became greater. By then, Camilla faced a choice: accept the new reality, or challenge Charles again and risk turning a family dispute into an institutional crisis before the public even knew. And if the palace believed the hardest decision had already been made, they were about to learn otherwise, because Charles still had one final explanation to give, and it could change how the entire family understood William's elevation. The final explanation came from Charles, and it changed the meaning of everything that had happened inside the palace. He reportedly asked Camilla to meet him privately, away from advisors and staff. There was no announcement waiting on a desk, and no audience to impress. The only issue left was the question she had asked from the beginning. Why had he strengthened William's future while closing a door for her grandson? Charles's answer, according to the account, was not about punishment. He believed the monarchy needed a clearer center. William was the direct heir, and his responsibilities would eventually become the responsibilities of the crown. Charles wanted that future defined before competing expectations could make the transition harder. Camilla still challenged him. She reportedly argued that clarity did not require exclusion. Her grandson could remain outside the succession while still receiving meaningful opportunities connected to the family. Charles understood the distinction, but he believed that official roles created expectations that the institution could not continue supporting simply because someone carried a royal connection. Then Charles admitted something more personal. He knew Camilla would fight the decision if she learned about it too early. That was why he had kept the final timing from her. He believed she would try to protect him from giving William greater authority, even after he had decided that the change was necessary. That admission reportedly hurt more than the decision itself. Camilla had believed her influence with Charles would at least guarantee a serious conversation before the final step. Instead, Charles had deliberately separated his personal relationship with her from the institutional decision he believed he had to make. The argument then reached its real question. Was Charles choosing William because he wanted William to rise faster, or because he believed the monarchy could no longer afford uncertainty? His answer reportedly favored the second explanation. Charles had spent years preparing for the crown, and according to this account, he understood exactly what it meant to build an institution around one future sovereign. He did not want William's authority constantly negotiated through the preferences of other relatives. He wanted the succession to remain direct, predictable, and difficult to challenge. That decision came with a price. Camilla's grandson would not receive every opportunity simply because he belonged to the family. Camilla would have less institutional influence. Charles himself would have to accept that his choices could create distance inside his own household. None of those consequences surprised him. That was the part Camilla reportedly found hardest to accept. Charles had not overlooked the damage. He had considered it and proceeded anyway. For William, the revelation carried its own weight. He had received a stronger position, but he could not treat it as a personal victory. His father had made the choice, yet William would inherit the public consequences. Every decision connected to his new authority could now be interpreted through the family conflict. William therefore chose restraint. He reportedly told Camilla that her grandson would not be humiliated. The institutional boundary would remain, but there would be no campaign to embarrass him or erase him from family life. William wanted the distinction to remain clear. A person could be outside an official royal role without becoming an enemy. That position gave Camilla little room to continue the fight. She could still disagree with Charles. She could still believe the decision was unfair, but she could no longer claim that William had engineered it against her family. The responsibility remained with Charles, and Charles accepted it. By then, the palace had already adapted to the new arrangement. William's responsibilities were being treated as established. Staff understood where approvals belonged. Camilla understood that the old assumptions about her grandson's future would not simply return. The emotional confrontation that had begun with anger now moved toward acceptance. Camilla reportedly admitted that part of her resistance had come from fear. She feared that once William became the unquestioned center of the monarchy's future, her own family would gradually become less visible inside the institution. The exclusion of her grandson had made that fear concrete. Charles listened. He did not promise to reverse the decision. Instead, he reportedly assured her that institutional limits did not erase family relationships. His decision could define the monarchy without defining the value of the people inside his family. That distinction finally gave Camilla something she had been missing. It did not give her the opportunity back. It gave her an explanation. William also had to face the meaning of his new position. The title connected to the future crown could no longer be treated as a distant promise. It represented responsibility, scrutiny, and the burden of knowing that his rise had coincided with disappointment for someone else. He reportedly understood that immediately. The strongest image from the entire episode was therefore not William receiving greater authority. It was the contrast between three people reacting to the same decision. Charles saw responsibility. William saw duty. Camilla saw loss. None of those reactions could cancel the others. And that is why the reported collapse remains the emotional center of the story. It represented the instant when a private fear became unavoidable. The future she had imagined for her grandson had collided with a new royal structure that placed William firmly at its center. The decision did not erase Camilla's family. It did something more precise. It established a boundary. William would carry the direct institutional future. Charles would stand behind the structure he had chosen. Camilla would remain part of the family, while accepting that her grandson's personal connection did not automatically create an official royal role. That is a painful conclusion, but it is also the point at which the conflict stops being a simple battle between relatives. The question becomes whether Charles was right to protect the clarity of succession at the cost of disappointing members of his own family. Some will argue that a monarchy cannot function through personal preference. Others will believe that family should matter when important opportunities are being decided. And that disagreement is exactly why this story continues to generate such strong reactions. The title promised a collapse, a royal elevation, and a grandson being shut out. But the deeper story is about what happens when family loyalty collides with institutional control. Charles chose a direction. William inherited the responsibility. Camilla inherited the pain of accepting it. And the grandson became the clearest symbol of what the new arrangement would no longer guarantee. There was also a consequence that could not be measured by schedules or official papers. The family would have to live with the knowledge that the decision had been made deliberately, not accidentally. Every future appearance could carry that memory. Every opportunity offered to William could remind Camilla of what her grandson had lost. Every discussion about the monarchy's next generation could reopen the same argument. That is what made the decision so difficult to undo. Reversing the exclusion would not simply change a diary entry, it would challenge the principle Charles had used to justify the entire restructuring. For Camilla, that meant the battle was no longer about one invitation, one position, or one missed opportunity. It was about whether the boundary Charles created would define the family for years to come, for everyone involved. If this story made you question whether Charles went too far, do not just scroll past it. Like this video, share it with someone who follows the royal family, subscribe to this channel, and turn on notifications, because standing up for the side you believe was pushed aside starts with refusing to stay silent. And stay with this channel, because the next royal story coming is even more explosive, and what happens next could make everything in this story look small.